biggest thing you learned this year that you would tell Mike from 6 months ago?
Don't give up. Because it was the number one thing that I was thinking about doing. And it was really scary because I never really gave up before.
Refuse the cash and do the favor.
Jack, we're dealing with a lot of frozen budgets these days. How are you working around that objection?
Move on to another prospect that doesn't necessarily have those budget limitations. My grandpa used to always say, hey man, there's a bus every 15 minutes.
What happens if I have an SDR that I just can't train?
Well, you take it out behind the shed.
They want you to be the coin smashing monkey doing the sales thing, and then they don't talk to you again.
From the Demostack Studios in Scottsdale, Arizona, this is Go to Market This Week.
Welcome to episode 4 of Go to Market This Week. We haven't been canceled yet. That's a big win. And another big win, we got Scotty Lyons here today. What's up, Scotty?
What's up, Nick? How's it going?
Man, I'm fantastic. Scotty is one of the AEs here at Demostack. And Scotty, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, you've worked at really big companies. You've worked at Demostack, you've worked at WalkMe, you've worked at AppDirect. How is it different selling today in October of 2020 than it was maybe even like 6 months ago?
Sure. Oh gosh. So just
no pressure. We're just going to open with that. Like, what's everything that's wrong with the world right now, Scotty? Fix it.
Well, I would say in the last 6 months, we've been asked to do more with less. And whether that's like just the responsibilities within an organization, running a fuller cycle, to wielding the tools that, you know, our finance team has bought for us, right? Our RevOps team has bought for us to maximize everything that we do. I'd say that more than ever, AEs and sales teams, even SDRs, BDRs, are asked to do more with the product. And there's been just a lot of limitations, of course, with how that's done historically. But more in the last 6 months, I've been able to have to do more with less.
So what does that look like? What does it look like doing more with less? Because we hear that, but does that mean less people? Does that mean less what?
Yeah, absolutely. Less people and less resources all around, right? I think the market's kind of dictated that, budgets are getting frozen, and that's both internally and externally with my prospects that I'm talking to. And so we're really trying to focus and solve challenges for them. But what I'm supposed to do in terms of preparation for those calls, delivering on those calls, follow-ups with those calls, headhunting for new opportunities. A lot of the stuff I'm trying now to work my systems and automate a lot, but still be relevant with the personal touches. So whether that's outreach or it's actually getting inside into a demonstration that I only have 30 minutes to showcase, right? I need to make sure that I get it right that one and only time and opportunity.
Yeah, you got to nail that. You got to nail that landing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's more challenging today? Again, October 2022. Is it full cycle selling or is it working with an SDR? It seems like an obvious answer, but I'm curious your take.
Sure. I'd say full cycle selling is tougher. I think there's a lot of different channels right now that you can find, buyers on, even more so than ever. I mean, obviously the traditional way of getting like a tool that can help you find your ICP, but I think even more so, and just leveraging your network. Right, everyone's trying to be an influencer these days. Everyone's trying to have a brand on LinkedIn or blog posts or even Instagram, and so TikTok, Twitter, right? So the ability to just like always be monitoring that is really tough. So if I could train an SDR to help, or my BDR to help me monitor those channels, and then help them understand the types of conversations that they can spike an opportunity to join a Zoom call, right, or just have like a short phone call with, then I think that's going to help me and not only allow me to focus on the rest of the sales process, right? But it's going to help with the overall numbers that just me doing it alone could do better than doing it with a one-on-one or 1-to-2 teammate.
So I want to dig into that. But first, in your words, what's the difference between an SDR, so a sales development representative, and a BDR, or a business development representative?
Sure. Well, I think it changes, the nomenclature from company to company, but I would say traditionally an SDR is going to be working inbound leads. So those warm leads coming through every marketing channel that you guys are working, right? And I'm sure, you've been very influential there. The BDR is going to be through outbound cold channels. So how do I dig something up like, oh my gosh, this person just had a really good, insightful blog post and it somehow cross-references to what my product solves for, right? And so I'm going to now hit them up and ask them for an opportunity to talk to them when they don't even see me coming. And that's really the BDR route.
How do you train your SDR to be effective for you? Because
Sure.
at the end of the day, you have to have a great relationship, but also you're the one, if it's not coming in, you can't say, well, my meetings aren't getting booked, because then the light shines back on you as kind of the leader of the two-person department, if you will.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, just take Demostack as an example, right? We're a company in the demo experience space. Excuse me. I think SDRs have never given a demo before they joined our organization, and they sure as heck haven't received one as like a decision maker, right? To evaluate a product. So for me, I thought the most important thing here, before the basic blocking and tackling of which systems are you going to live in every single day and how do you monitor your daily tasks, right? I want them to get the big picture. Like, what does our company do, right? How does the product work? What are the challenges we solve for? What spaces do we actually play in, right? And who are those buyers of those companies, and what are they really interested in, right? A product marketer cares about Demostack way different than like a sales engineering, right? So I think taking that and really help that messaging land and stick, then all that other basic blocking and tackling I mentioned, I think when you get into outreach to create a sequence or sales loft to create messaging, right, they're able to really connect the dots.
I like that. What happens if I have an SDR that I just can't train? Yeah, I just can't teach this old dog new tricks. What do you do?
Sure. Well, you take it out behind the shed, and kidding. So I would say
we're not promoting violence here at Go to Market this week. Just putting that out there.
So what I would do is really understand that, in that world, like what you're asking an SDR to focus on, if an AE has to know this much, an SDR really only has to know this much, but they have to really, really good at it. So if they're not performing well or they're underperforming, I think it's a great opportunity to really focus on the personalization of how you're instructing and enabling them, and really understanding that what you're asking them to do shouldn't take like months and months and months. This could be a quick turnaround, right? If you really just connect with them and help them understand what you're trying to do, and most importantly, get in the trenches with them.
And I think that's an opportunity that's also missed. I talk to a lot of AEs who don't get into the trenches. Like, they'll admit it. They'll say, I should sit on, go through some gongs with my SDR, or I should look at, but I kind of trust them. But then you're leaving them to, idle hands, right?
Or, hey, what about just getting on and viewing other AEs calls? Right. We've got all this stuff at our fingertips. Right. And I think, again, like being asked to do more with less in the last 6 months, right? There's been a big opportunity. A lot of stuff has been put on pause. But now it's a better opportunity for me to sharpen my skill sets again. And if we just sit around not doing anything, then it'll get stale quickly.
What if you don't have a good SDR manager?
Sure. Well, first, I'd love to ask that organization, how did you hire this SDR manager? Was it an outside hire? What were you at 100 and 200 employees at this point, right? And you decided to hire an SDR team, or were you guys, seed funded and your first SDR hire was just an SDR and that person graduated into an SDR manager role? Because I think you have to unpack those two paths, right? Did you bring an outside hire that was an expert, but really doesn't understand your product that well? Or did you hire someone internally where, sure, they rose through the ranks, but this is their first leadership position and maybe you need to round out some of those skill sets? Both of those paths, it needs to be like the VP of sales, or I think like the head of enablement, or someone that comes in from a leadership perspective though, and helps that SDR manager learn. Because more often than not, right, that is like kind of the first layer of leadership people get into.
And we joke about kind of friction between sales and marketing, but we're here talking about go to market. So, it's critical that if you're getting this deep in your own internal team, right? Because I'm sure there's times where you're running in with conflicts between like the SDR team and the AE team, even though everyone's under the same umbrella. Am I right?
100%. And our KPIs, while we try and build them to make them fully aligned for success for the business, sometimes, right, they can conflict. So, Jack, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Jack? Jack Doheny from Grin. Jack, thanks for joining us today. So, Jack, first of all, if you are in Denver, you need to talk to Jack. Go and see Jack, because Jack is one of the most engaging, likable people I have ever met in person. And Jack, I actually came up and told you this. I talk to people every day. You are so charismatic and so likable. I mean, I don't even need Grin, and I want to buy it from you just so I can buy it from you, man.
Well, thanks. Yeah, that certainly doesn't hurt, but definitely still got to push out the value too. But I appreciate that. It was fun having you out there. So, yeah, anytime anybody's out in Denver, give me a holler. We'll buzz you into WeWork and get some work going.
So, Jack, one of the things that Scotty and I have been talking about today is full cycle selling AE, versus working with an SDR. So, Scotty, what you got?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to know your guys' process today. Who's doing the discovery? And I don't mean like the discovery call. I mean a lot of like the research, putting together the target lists, all that stuff. And then if it is the SDR, like how much responsibility are you giving them?
Totally. And this is near and dear to my heart because I started as an SDR at Grin and then worked my way up over about probably like a year and a half. So we've got a lot of kind of fun outbound ways. So to answer your question quickly, yes, we have a SDR pair relationship. So every AE on at Grin is aligned one SDR on the on the commercial side, and then more on the mid-market enterprise, they have actually two SDRs that are cranking for them. And then in addition to that, we've got secondary inbound, what we would consider our market develop representatives. So they're more on the marketing side, working with the marketing team, fielding those inbound leads that are coming in, and those all operate on a round robin. And then in addition to that, we have let's say a pool of about 30, I want to say, BDRs that are either like new hires or like just off of ramp. And they are also on a round robin for AEs as well. So you've got, as a commercial AE, the side of the team that I'm on, I've got my one aligned SDR, and then I have a round robin pool of SDRs doing outbound. And then I have a round robin pool of MDRs, we call them, booking inbound. So from a prospecting perspective, that's certainly where a lot of the heavy lifting is coming from. That said, we have a saying here at Grin, you win together and you don't lose alone. And so in a lot of scenarios, I don't want to say a lot of scenarios, but sometimes where pipeline can get a little bit more on the thin side, the onus does definitely come back on the team. When I say team, the pod structure for the AE to step in and start doing some outbound and really just augmenting what's existing going on at the moment. So from an outbound perspective, that's who's out there doing the research and booking the meetings is the majority of the SDR. But in this pod structure, there's a lot of collaboration in prioritizing, getting different strategies and angles, ways to get meetings booked. And it's kind of funny too. The team kind of is like, because everybody, you know how it is, like people have their own accounts, and you're not trying to poach your friends' accounts or anything like that. Just like you don't want your accounts poached. But, when you find out cool brands that your coworkers are working with, there's kind of fun, creative ways that we're trying to help them out too. So, for example, there's a brand, I can't recall, it's called like Love Cow or something like that. Anyway, long story short, it's a dairy-free milk brand.
Oh, phew.
Yeah, but it's cool. But long story short, they're doing a pop-up here in Denver, and I went out to it because they're like, oh, we're selling in this retail store in Denver. So I went there on Friday and I cleaned out the shelf. I took a selfie and then I sent it to my AE buddy that's working the account just to kind of, help nudge things through. So I know that's a lot of kind of creativity thrown in there, but that's the state of the union at the moment.
Nice. Well, tell me this, like unpack your relationship with your SDR with me. Like, are you guys meeting on like weekly or biweekly cadences? Are you giving them lists of the accounts you want them to focus on? Are you helping curate that message, or is it like the SDR manager, I guess, who's kind of owning that across the entire team and just kind of going through like reports in Salesforce or your CRM or something?
Great question. So we kind of turned it up to 11 recently at Grin. So every AE has 3 hour-long blocks per week with their SDR. And so for me, that's, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And then with closeout week right now too, I'm meeting with her for 15 minutes a day just to like make sure that we're getting aligned on stuff. She's super close to getting promoted from ramped BDR to a senior BDR. And so I am just like, hey, Sarah, like, let's, get you there as quickly, or not as quickly, but let's get you there because we're so darn close. And so anyway, as far as what that structure looks like as prioritizing accounts and stuff like that, like we as an AE take a lot of ownership on that because at the end of the day, we want to have our eyes on the account list that our rep is working on and seeing other creative ways, again, that we can get things over the line. So not only is that in a scenario where we're helping them prioritize what accounts we want to go after, but when we've got things on the books, I'm on every discovery call too. And so that's been a huge thing at Grin, where a lot of team selling aspect. And that's huge for all parties around. Like, I always harp on the team selling aspect, even with other reps that I meet at other companies, because being on those discovery calls, that's my reps call. That's my BDR's call. I'm letting them take the lead. They worked super hard to get there. That's where they take their ownership. But I want to be there to support wherever I can. And I mean, hey, if I can hot transfer that into maybe doing another, I mean, if I'm lucky, get an hour-long demo out of it, or at least kind of show them under the hood enough that it gets them really fired up to do a full-blown demo. Again, it's a win-win. And, you know, it helps the BDR in the room also see, okay, what are the questions that my AE is asking, and how can I loop those into my conversations, maybe via email or, you know, in a video prospecting thing. So yeah, we get a lot of value out of that over here too.
Nice. And not have to watch a gong call, right?
Right, exactly.
Jack, we're dealing with a lot of frozen budgets these days, either real or imaginary. How are you working around that objection?
First of all, and this is something that I've been working on a lot from like my price negotiation standpoint, always starting with empathy, just being like, okay, hey, like, get it. You know, price, you know, budgets getting frozen a lot of places. We speak to a lot of brands in that scenario. Really, like, in the back of my mind, I'm always kind of like, okay, well, let me find a company that doesn't have their budget frozen and focus a lot of attention and energy on that. But if my pipeline's a little thin and I got to throw a little extra juju on those accounts that I want to move that budget forward, highlighting cost of inaction, obviously, like, okay, how are we going to reach these goals that we set up if we're not going to implement a solution for you all? And kind of going back to like the kind of Keenan model of like identifying that gap and then seeing how they're going to fill that gap with their current process. So like for Grin, we encounter a lot of brands that are doing a ton of manual process to manage their in-house programs. And so I kind of remind them like, hey, you're currently using a typewriter right now where I could be selling you a MacBook Pro. How much quicker do you think that you're going to be able to realize those revenue goals that you have for yourself if you're not using a fast tool? And also really identifying, and again, this is specific to Grin, but saying really how they're going to be slow on a lot of different aspects of their digital marketing strategy if they're not utilizing creator partnerships to help augment that, like repurposing UGC on the social side, using that UGC on their paid media side. So again, this is all like more specific to Grin, but the two main things are, number one, identify the gap and, you know, highlight the cost of inaction if they don't implement a solution sooner than later based on the timelines for their goal. And then number two, again, this is a bit of a cop-out answer, I understand, but move on to another prospect that doesn't necessarily have those budget limitations, because my grandpa used to always say, hey man, there's a bus every 15 minutes. And so kind of having that mindset too.
That's a winner's mindset. Gap Selling by Keenan is what Jack was referring to. Great read. Have you read Gap Selling, Scott?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So Jack, I'm going to assume you recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. We're required to read it at Grin. So yeah, I think I've got it around here somewhere, but yeah, good book.
Send Scotty a copy.
Yeah, please. I'll take the Spark Notes.
Yeah.
Jack Doheny from Grin. Appreciate you.
No worries. Hey, great meeting, guys. Talk to you guys soon.
Number three is it's just not no, it's just not now. And I think I was saying one of the cool things I had was an opportunity to go visit WalkMe in their Tel Aviv office. And we did a day at Jerusalem. We hired a guide, and the guide gave us just a phenomenal tour. There's like 30 of us, right? And we did like a recap of the day of like, what did you learn today that you could apply to WalkMe as we're riding the bus back to Tel Aviv? And someone said, that tour guide does this 7 days a week, the same tour, and the energy and information and active listening that he came with was phenomenal. And we need to do that every day in our job as well. And I think that recognizing that, you know, say this person might not have budget right now, I think you're still relationship building, and you're like, hey, if it's not right now, that's fine. Keep in touch with me. I still want to understand what your problems are. Let's take a look. Let me tell you how you can deeply solve them. And if I have to jump on another call with them, like I'll still do that and then assume that something might come up later. And I think that's also a good philosophy to have.
You've been doing this job for years now. What is something that today's Scotty wishes he could go back and tell Scotty 5 or 6 years ago?
If I could go back to like 2016 and redo this, Well, first of all, I'd hit up Jonathan and tell him to build Demostack a lot earlier.
Jonathan's our CEO, by the way,
Yeah.
who had the great epiphany that, wait a minute, how is there not a great product to tell great product stories?
But I think what I would really focus on is joining the communities outside of work. I've been in Pre-Sales Collective as a lurker for, a couple of years now, as an active participant very shortly. And I think that there's, just like Nick, you're building a really great brand for yourself outside of Demostack, but just something you're also passionate about, you're interested about, you're curious about, you're tapping into that. And I think what's easier now, and maybe it was around in 2016, and I just wasn't paying attention, but really get into those communities. Like if there was just an SDR community outside of work, right? And, shout out to my boy, Josh Roth over at Lob, he's VP of sales. He's done a really great job, and he actually started building one of those a couple of years ago. And so I think doing that, paying attention and networking that way would have helped me when I was questioning some of the transitions between those companies that I've been to.
Speaking of which, we didn't even talk about this, but next week, MJ Patent is coming on, and we're going to talk about how to leverage communities, because I met MJ via Pavilion. So how do you leverage Rev Genius and Pavilion and Pre-Sales Collective and all these other ways, Thursday Night Sales, these other ways where these other sellers are there to create influence. We're going to talk about that because we do have some great guests coming on today. In your experience, what area do AEs typically need the most refining in? Is it discovery? Is it demos? Is it the overall process? Where do people typically hit a speed bump?
Yeah, I think well, first of all, the maturation of the role, I think, kind of runs into a few different levels. So the first one's it's got to be what are your good soft skill sets? So how are you introing the call? How are you driving the agenda? How are you tying in their challenges and stories through active listening, right, back into what you're going to promote when that's the company that you represent, right? It's got to be a consultative call. If you're just pitching at someone through slides, or I love, was it Death by Demo? We had coined around one time. If you just vomit demo on the screen, it's never going to actually connect, right? So all that stuff before you even get to those more, advanced steps in the sales process need to be taken care of. From there, what I would really say the next foundational block that I was able to really learn and learn from my old mentor at WalkMe, shout out Matt Bigelow, was to be an expert in the product that I'm representing. And I don't just mean that from how to talk to it. I mean how to actually use it. Demostack, WalkMe's, and a lot of these applications are almost like learning a video game. That's my best analogy is right. So why not push it? I didn't build the video game, right? I didn't build Halo, but I'm going to go beat it on Legendary. And so for me, that's how I view Demostack. That's how I viewed WalkMe. And I think that's how I was really able to excel. And I would recommend that for any AE that's trying to get into an organization that, you have that capability, is to become a master of that product, because not only could you get on a call and solve someone's challenges by talking to them about it, but what if I was showing them in real time with the product as well? Okay,
let's unpack discovery a little bit.
Sure.
What would today's Scotty tell Scotty from 5 years ago about discovery? What's the biggest thing you've learned about really asking great questions?
Yeah, 100%. Well, preparation. Right. So how do I quickly analyze and maximize my time? So I'm not spending 2 hours prepping for a discovery call. Right. But if in 10 minutes, can I really actually not assume what I know is going to be their needs, right? But really understand intimately what their product does and what it's more likely or not going to fit with Demostack. So preparation is going to be huge, and being able to understand, of course, where that person's been historically in their career. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on a call and noticed, oh my gosh, well, the company that they were at previously, maybe I had sold into them from a past company, or maybe, they actually use the product I'm currently representing. Right. So I'd say that honestly is the most important thing than how you're going to set the agenda when you first come into a call. But again, that all ties into even the basics of training back to the SDR level of what are we learning? What does this product do? Right. So it's all interconnected.
Some of my favorite followers on LinkedIn for discovery is going to be KD, Kevin Dorsey, Charles Mulbauer, and Moore Asseline. So 3 of my favorites right there. Let's talk about the demos, and not just because at Demostack, obviously that's a highlight of what we do, but what is, again, Scotty today telling Scotty from 5 years ago about doing a great demo?
Oh gosh. So obviously making sure that your demo flow is something that is part of a playbook. So my demos have certain plays. I do not just do a one size fit all. I try and understand the space and the challenges I'm solving for, right? So that when I do show the product, that it resonates with them depending on what they're trying to look for. Okay. Now, just like any playbook and just like Bill Belichick trying to win 6 Super Bowl championships.
Screw the Patriots.
In 18 years.
Fuck Boston.
Right? What happens? You know, he comes out in I formation in the playoffs when they've been playing spread offense all season long, and Tom Brady's been in the shotgun, right? But that won the championship. So why do I say this? Competition is heated in our space. Competition's heated in every space that I've been in software. And what's awesome is to be a part of an amazing product team that rolls out new features and concepts. And I've got to be able to refresh my demo. So I would say no more than 3 months, 1 quarter, do you go without trying to actually reinvent your demo wheel and really take a look at like, what's the competition doing? What's new that I can incorporate and making sure that not that you're creating like, FUD or false promises, but that you're really trying to get the person, you're challenging the prospect you're talking to think about the problems you're solving for differently. Because just like Demostack a year ago, we were solving for something, that was smaller to what now we're doing as a holistic demo experience platform. So
when you look back at different software products that you've sold before, if you had a tool like Demostack, I'm not trying to plug Demostack, but if you had a tool like Demostack, like how would you position it differently at WalkMe, let's say?
What I would have done is really tried to, and this is unique actually, because it brings up a good example actually of a customer who won't just replace their entire demo with Demostack. WalkMe, if anyone doesn't know, is like it's a guidance and engagement platform that overlays on top of another environment. So there are technical limitations to how we can actually change their demo. But what they recognized was insights, their dashboards, right? The value that they're telling these customers that they can get out of the WalkMe tool, right? Up to that point was very stale. They had to pump in fake analytics and data, right, and it only ever told one story, right? If you're talking to a 10,000 person company that wants to look at, Workday with WalkMe, but your insights showed a 5,000 person Salesforce organization, it's probably not the best experience, right? So earlier on in the sales process, what I would have done is curated that insights based off of my discovery call, based off of all that research I had done online, and really tried to listen and then curate that environment, not because I'm faking it till I make it, but hey, this is exactly what the product's going to look like when you buy it. And I think that not only do they appreciate that on those first couple of calls, but it really helps bridge the gap between what they perceive and what is a reality.
We talk a lot about storytelling at Demostack because we do help you tell a better story with the product. Where is storytelling, since it's something we talk about every day? I mean, where has that changed for you since you've been at Demostack? Like how you try and tell a compelling story?
I think it has. Not to toot your own horn, Nick, but you've kind of rubbed off on us a lot. I really appreciated the way that you've spun storytelling, the way that you came to the offsite last time and you told a story and then you asked us to unpack how you grabbed our attention, how you kept us engaged, how you presented us with a problem and a challenge, how you overcome it, right? And then we were left asking questions about whether or not that person survived when they went overboard on the cruise ship, right? I was engaged, man. I was engaged. So how has my storytelling improved here? It's improved actually through internal communication. So I think storytelling has always been a strength of mine, but I only know what I know. So what's been really great for me is to connect with people from the marketing team, people from the product team, people from the finance team, like Dave Weiseneck, just our VP of finance is
great guy.
Yeah. One of the best people to ever connect with about learning about the buyer's persona. Not only is he, is he deciding on whether or not gets budget, but he also thinks about like what he appreciates out of a demo. That has improved what I'm doing on demo calls so much since I came here. So this is an example.
And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot about negotiating from Dave, right? Because he's like, because we're social selling. So when someone, I'm going to get a lot of calls now, but someone's like, hey, Nick, we got a great product. Can you get me in front of your head of RevOps or your head of CS? So I've learned a lot from Dave and like what he's asking, how he's negotiating price. By the way, Dave, you're coming in the studio. We got to have I think that'd be an interesting conversation. How 100%. Do we as sellers look at the other side of the table, especially with someone like Dave, who I think's got so much experience at it. So Dave, we're booking you.
Dave, you're coming in.
You're coming in. You got no choice. Okay, so we talked about communities earlier, but where are you brushing up on your AE knowledge? Are you getting it from LinkedIn? Are there great follows you're following? Is it from communities, or is it like, hey, Nick, I don't know, where should I be looking to up my AE skills?
Sure. I'd say I'm probably more, even though I'm a millennial, I'm probably more of the Gen Zers because I don't, I read the sales books when I first got in like a decade ago.
Yep.
But now I get a lot of the content from people that are just regurgitating that, putting their spin on it and putting it through quick hitters on LinkedIn, right? Putting it through quick hitters on Twitter. And I feel like, I really do appreciate that. It's cool to, literally like I'll log in and it'll be a new, different, innovative and contemporary way to handle a cold call. Right. And so I think that stuff's been really cool to be able to take in. And then it's just like, it's daily. Right. So it's not like I have to set aside the time to go read something and then come back. So
what about when it's overwhelming though? So Jay Bay told me when I'm outbounding, I need to do this, but then Charles Mulbauer suggested I do this and it conflicts. How do you kind of, wade through that?
Yes. I just put both of them on mute for a few weeks. And then, so what I typically like to do is trial by fire. Right. So just take something, try it and see what happens. I can't tell you how many times I've even done that here where, I would try something out. Like, okay, this is not working. Back to the drawing board, right?
So a lot of AEs I talk to can nail the process. They're good at a lot of the pieces to the puzzle, but where a lot of them struggle is actually asking for the sale, which blows my mind because I'm like, everything is just reverse engineering to getting to asking for the sale.
Sure.
What's the best advice you have for a new AE on how to actually, land that account and say, hey, I want your business?
So you got to do this a couple calls in, but I love saying if price wasn't a factor, is WalkMe or insert your company here, is this the best vendor or is this the best option for you and your team to move forward? And I think that really dispels a lot of the negotiation and you really just focus on is this product the best thing for my business? Did you win? Not technically, but did you win to solve their business challenges that they sought out to actually overcome when they first started talking to you? And so I try and use that as much as I can,
Okay. So they say yes. What do you follow up with?
Awesome. Well, if they say yes, then how do we get there? Right. And I think that you really lean into negotiations at that point. But I think at that point, I'm really able to understand that I don't have to focus my efforts so much on competition anymore. And then it's really about how do we just get this, how do we get Cinderella to the ball, I guess.
Okay. Another question for 5 years ago, Scotty, what's the best tip you've learned about negotiating in the last 5 years?
Give and get, forgive and let go. But I think that there's a big thing about, sales, right? It's the nature of the game, right? Everyone's trying to find the best deal, right? And even if I have to go through channels to get discounts, to get approvals, to come up with something creative, right? I've always got to feel like I'm coming to those decision makers on my team that my prospect's willing to agree to as well, right? So making sure that we're meeting halfway in the middle, coming to terms. Because if we're bending over backwards for everything, sometimes I feel like it's getting off to the wrong foot. Everyone's got to be doing this in good faith and putting their best foot forward.
So we talked a lot about building champions with the prospect side, but sometimes I guess you have to build a champion on internally as well.
100%,
right?
100%.
What does that look like?
I think it takes a lot of self-motivated, hard work, curiosity, to put yourself in a position where the people that you're going to make asks appreciate your hard work, appreciate your viewpoint, and appreciate, this ask that you're making. And I think they'll give it more consideration. That's the humanity side of it. But hey, if it's a big logo, it's a big deal, right? Then they appreciate maybe just that hard work that you get this opportunity to come knocking. So
Barrett Unger from Immersa, glad to have you on today. Really appreciate you.
What's up, Barrett? So you've recently made the jump from an SDR to an account executive. We really love to understand what's the biggest learning curve that you've had to deal with?
Yeah, I guess what are the previous answers to this question that you've heard? So
no, you're the first one, buddy. This is a Barrett specific question. We tailor it
do
here
a lot
at
of research.
Demostack TV.
I don't know what your expectation is here, but you are not one of many. You are a singular individual, and we appreciate you.
Okay, so this is I just demonstrated one of the first things I learned, which is refuse the coin and the monkey. So when somebody shows up for a discovery call or first call with them, they think that you're just going to do a demo for them and tell them more about you and be sold to. They want you to be the coin smashing monkey doing the sales thing, and then
Okay.
they want to say, "Can you send me a pamphlet?" And then they don't talk to you again. And so the first thing to do is say, when you're asked a question, like take ownership of the frame, like ask them a question back, get some context for where they're asking the question from. What is the specific outcome that they're looking for? What have they heard previously? What are they currently trying to do? And then that gives you any sort of information you share about yourself or your company is in context to their story, to the thing that they've already heard, to the thing that they're already trying to look to do, and it contrasts to what they've already tried. Otherwise, like, what's the point in selling them?
So it's like Steve Carell from 40-Year-Old Virgin, just, always follow up with a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah, or just take the frame, like refuse. I'm fortunate to have like really good coaches and mentors who will sit and watch film with me and like train me how to listen and train me like what questions to ask when's the time and place to ask that question. And it's all about setting up frames. Like there's some good materials out there like Oren Klaff, Bow-Tied Sales Guy, but it's really just sitting with people and watching film. And then listening for things like ums and likes and trying to refine that way. But so that was one of my primary hurdles.
Love it. Nick, the playbook that I talked about earlier and what goes into research, it's film. It's just like all the sports analogies you can think of. We can watch our call recordings, right? Everyone should be doing that.
If you watch yourself, you'll find crutch words, you'll find negative words, you'll find, did I ask that question correctly? Or what, watch their reaction. How did their body movement or their body language react to what I said? Barrett, you and I know each other from some dark social circles, and I'm really curious. I mean, you're one of the top social sellers out there, at least from my perspective, or one of the earliest adopters of it. How is social selling affected you developing pipeline now as an AE?
Well, thanks for the praise. I don't identify myself as one, a very active LinkedIn user, or two, a top social seller. So that's news to my ears. I do use it though. Like I do send out messages. I'm probably one of those Grim Reapers that's actually out there doing the fatal pitch slap stuff. Like I just go straight for the business relevance. Like maybe there's some personalization in terms of looking at their profile, seeing what they like. Are they on LinkedIn? Or are they not in LinkedIn? That focuses time. And then what is this person posted about? What do they care about? What are they trying to do based off of the business they work for or the function that they play in that business? And then try to evaluate like what about the thing that I'm selling could help them do their job better, whether that's make more money, save time, get them promoted, whatever it may be. And then just like really short, like trying to fit into something that they're already doing, like getting them to disqualify themselves. And I'm mostly running just straight DMs. Like I know that Morgan Smith and Nick Thickett put out this really cool social selling guide.
I'm aligned. Actually, Morgan, we're flying Morgan down from Denver in a couple of weeks to be on an episode.
Yeah, he was. I met him at SaaStr. He was just great to talk with. But they've put out some of the best content, and Kellen K-Spear also has a guide around it, and we'll coach around it as well. But it's just like be in their comments, know who you're talking to, what you're talking about, add value. I'm also just pretty focused on trying to understand that person's workflow and what they care about, so that I can quickly just say like, hey, are there any current initiatives regarding the thing that I'm selling about, and it can help you boost revenue or identify upsell, cross-sell opportunities. And if that's something that they're doing or something that they're concerned with, they're going to message me back and we're going to start a conversation right there. But I try not to spend a bulk of my time posting on LinkedIn and hoping that's going to generate business. I just try to figure out who are the people and the types of businesses and the types of roles that what I'm selling may be relevant to.
I love that. Let's separate then social selling from dark social, because you and I are in a WhatsApp group or a couple WhatsApp groups, and that's how I met you, right? Mm-hmm. And frankly, you and I have been back and forth of like, hey, you know what, I need an introduction to this, or Nick, you know what, I think this person I just talked to could use Demostack. If it's not for dark social, I'm not having these conversations with you, right?
I think that's definitely where I I guess let's call it the dark social playbook, is where I focus the bulk of my time. And I learned this directly from Pat Joyce, who grew up working on
great.
garbage trucks, and his brother was like the head of the garbage truck union wherever they were at. And his whole thing was refuse the cash and do the favor. And that way, whenever he needed something done, he would have a book of people who owed him something, and he just helped them make more money, or introduced them to the right person to talk to, or got them to the right solution, or helped them out of the pickle. And that pays back so much more than the $20 or $100 cash to get paid off. Like, make it less overtly transactional, and just do the best thing you possibly can by that person based off of the problem they're currently experiencing. And then if and when and maybe that pays off in the long term.
I might get that as a tattoo. Refuse the cash and do the favor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was fucking great.
I'm making an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, and that's not my own thing. I learned that directly from Pat Joyce, and like Pat's been models that in everything he does, and I'm just so lucky to be working for him.
Barrett, such a pleasure having you. Thanks for coming on today. We'll see you around the internet.
Thanks for asking me, Scotty. It was really nice to meet you.
I'll see you on that dark social web thing.
No, you're not invited.
Right on. Check you there.
There are a lot of AEs right now out there on the market. If you're an AE, how do you properly assess a product or a service or a company to see if it's a good fit to join?
Great one. So just focusing on the product side of it, right?
Well, it's hard to really understand culture in 3 or 4 conversations, right? Well, you tell me. What are you looking at? Are you looking product side? Are you looking culture?
Nick, let me ask you this. Do you think in 3 to 4 calls with people in an organization that you could suss out who you want to potentially report to and work with?
It depends.
Okay.
I would say if it's occasionally that has happened to me. It happened to me at Demostack.
I think it's because you probably knew what you were looking for more. And earlier on, 6 years ago, Scotty, I think I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to a lot of things. And a lot of the buzzwords in Silicon Valley glossed over. I think now it's not that I'm jaded. What I'm saying though is that I'm really in tune to what I'm looking for now. And I think this is exactly what I told the Demostack team. Exactly what I tell every team now is I'm looking for 3 main pillars. Where one is completely reliant on the one before it to be solved, and the first one is the product. Right. So, how is this product making a difference? Is it already, or is it going to be potentially the leader in the space? So are there differentiations about the product that really allow me to feel that this is going to be better than maybe an alternative on the marketplace? So that really forces you to do digging into the sales process. And, just like what we're trying to solve for, if there aren't demos widely available for that product already, or videos and YouTubes, well, you better be asking to see it in your sales process, or your interview process, excuse me. So that's the first thing. The next thing is like, who am I reporting to? And is that going to be a mentor of mine? And if that manager or boss isn't going to be a mentor, is there someone else inside the organization that you can be a mentor with? So maybe that's their boss, right? You always got to keep learning, and you've always got to keep pushing yourself, or maybe have people push you. And I've never found that to be more critical than I have in the last 4 years. And then if those 2 things get solved for, then the third is the culture, right? So who am I working with? Is everyone curious? Is everyone trying to solve a problem? Is everyone going above and beyond and outside of their lanes? Like I hate the phrase "stay in your lane." I hate that phrase, right? Like if you're coming with an attitude that's trying to be helpful, listen, right? And I'll do the same. So all that being said, hey, awesome mentor, great culture, crappy product. That stuff does not matter unless that first one's solved for, because I think we're all here to try and jump on a rocket ship. So
I'm with you, but how do you know the product's good? How do you assess that?
Yeah. And I think it's what I said earlier. Like you really got to assess it, ask the right questions. Like you really got to say, after the formal recruiting interview and you get to that next one, of course you're going to build rapport with that person. And then they're asking you to hey, we really want to give you this homework assignment where you're going to give this presentation and it's going to be 30 minutes in front of this board. I want you to say, okay, cool. Well, here's what I need. And I need you to demo the product to me. And hey, that actually might help me in the next round of my interviews, but also I want to see what your demo looks like today. Right. And I want to understand what the product does. I'm going to ask you on that call, hey, what separates you competitively? I want to understand how they're doing it today. Maybe that's a gap for me to come fill in as well. But also I'm trying to see how this thing works. And if it doesn't really work up to standards of what I want to work for, then I think that's a good way of assessing it out.
One of the key things about being a great AE is really assessing your pipeline and understanding where you actually sit. So how do you do that? How do you take a real honest look at your pipeline? So you're in AE, I'm looking at my pipe, I'm square locked into Salesforce. How do you honestly assess where you sit to not just hit your quota for this month, but for the quarter? Like, how do you actually know where you are? Honestly.
Sure. Yeah. And I think every VP of sales and RevOps person would love the answer to that question too, right? What's the difference between, gut and commit? And I think that it's tough for me to have 100% certainty when I'm forecasting.
Yep.
What I like to try and do is break it down into a couple components. I think the technical win helps me really understand what has legs to move quickly or not. And so I just try and I assess things by where they are in the stages of my sales process. So I know that they typically boil down those to 1 through 5 or something in Salesforce, right? Each of them is named differently, but they're gated for a reason. So if I can say that, all right, I've got these 5 through a technical evaluation, I've got 30 days left to the end of the quarter. That's more than enough time to close these. Hey, I've only got 2 done and there's 2 weeks left. Well, then, it's looking like I'm probably going to push that to the next month.
So I'm a buyer. It's, December 31st. I'm at a New Year's Eve party. I'm stalling. You need this for your quarter, for your month, your quarter, and your end of year. What are you doing, Scotty?
Show me the money. No, I don't know. I think I'm probably somewhere up in the mountains skiing. And at that point, it's over, right? I mean, are you really going to expect that if someone hasn't had if you haven't run them through your process yet and you're waiting for something to happen at the 11th hour, I would say that you should have done something differently earlier on. But to not get your head down, if you're in a good position with the organization, it's not going to be all end all, and to work through it in January.
So when you look back at those, I was close, and you honestly assess where you've made mistakes, what's kind of the biggest mistake you've repeated over the years?
Earlier on in the sales process, connecting and finding and unrooting true business pain and value. So understanding the pain, sure, but connecting it to how impactful is this to their business, I think has been something that historically I wasn't very good at earlier on in the sales process.
That's probably typical. That's probably a typical answer.
And I think it's because when you rise through the ranks, you're in a more transactional sale at first, right? Small business, mid-market, commercial, right? And then as you go up, that's all you're doing. And you're just looking for a couple of those, a quarter, a year, whatever it is that you're selling and what your ASP is. So
you and I were here this morning in the studio. We were kind of going through some gongs earlier. There's certain tools in the sales stack which are obviously critical, but something like conversation intelligence, some people will say is a nice to have. I disagree. I think every conversation should be recorded for a lot of reasons. What do you wish we had in our tech stack? Pretend we're talking to Eric, our head of RevOps right now. What do you wish you had? Eric, pay attention.
What do I wish?
Let me get my cell phone. I'm going to call him. Hold on. All right. Here we have an ask, Eric. Just listen. Scotty's talking. Just listen.
So, Eric, I was told to come up with something to include into our sales tech stack that we don't have today that would, make me a better seller, right? So, off the top of my head, I can think of first appreciation. You've done a heck of a job for getting us everything that's best in class for every single one of the tools. What I would say that would be cool, I think that we need better product analytics. And I don't mean that from hey, I'm a prospect and I want to use Demostack to see what's my ROI. I mean actual analytics on product usage from our perspective to help the CS team, and then also help me understand what features are more valuable. Because at this point, I really do believe that while we're driving ROI for clients, I would love to understand what's more influential from a UI perspective and maybe help drive the roadmap a little bit more effectively. I honestly feel like we have everything we need from a sales perspective of a sales tech stack.
Okay, good. So the answer is we have everything we need.
We're locked and loaded.
Don't call us. Don't call us. Don't WhatsApp me. Don't, Nick, I need a favor. Just shut the fuck up. Mike Wander, the head of new partnerships at SaaStr, or new partnerships sales leader, but we're big fans of SaaStr here. Mike, thanks for joining us on Go to Market this week.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick.
What's up, Mike? Nice to meet you. I just was really curious, like, what goes into the thought process of a solid, like, customized email?
Yeah, for sure. So when I'm creating a customized message, the number one question on my mind is, what value can I bring to this person? And then how can I be relevant and personable at the same time? Right. And so the first thing I'll do is I'll go and I'll check their LinkedIn or for any news that's come out on the company. And my goal is to fit that personalized touch into the first 2 lines of the email and then match it with relevancy later on in the body. And so say I'm like prospecting you, Nick. I might say, your daughter looks stoked riding shotgun for the Demostack tour, Nick. Couldn't get on my LinkedIn without seeing you and the brand all over. Love it. Right. And where most sales teams go wrong is after that first 2 line of hitting the personalization touch, they just throw in some like automatic value prop and it makes it seem robotic. Right. And so what you can do to level up that email even more is through your 5 minutes of research that you did for this prospect, right, to interrupt their day, is you can change up your value prop. And so for me, what that might look like is, seems like the team has plenty of creative juices flowing around. And events might be a great way to continue being creative without losing community momentum. With 15,000 B2B SaaS CEOs and execs attending SaaStr Annual, thoughts on leveraging events in 2023?
I like that. What do you think,
Yeah.
Scotty?
Are we going? Did we get a booth? I'm going. No, that's great, Mike. I really think that's actually something Nick and I were talking about earlier. Is just like, you find all of the information on a prospect, but then what do you do with it, right? And I think making sure that you're not sounding like a robot is probably the most important thing, number one. So love it.
Right. And sometimes you take that extra 5 minutes, but then it's like, what do you do with the rest of the email?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to just drop the ball? Because you've already started off with a high tone. So you better finish it off pretty high too.
Mike, let me ask you this. What do you do when you have an event like SaaStr, which is a huge thing, but it's next year, right? How are you creating urgency today to get people to buy today?
Over a year from now. And the answer to that is really, like, what are you looking to get out of the event, right? Are you looking to spend $60,000 on a sponsorship for a gold booth and just show up and cross your arms and, hope people come to you? Or do you want to capitalize on your investment that you've made, work with me and the team, and make this whole year that we have to formulate a guerrilla marketing campaign, to get the word out that you're going to SaaStr, to get the logo on the website, right? To prep your marketing team for what's to come, the 100 and 120 days before you hit SaaStr hard. And that's what it's all about, right? It's not about the fact that you get the better booth selection. I mean, that's a plus. But what it's really about is, are you preparing your team? Are you the leader that's going to go in and prepare your team for what's coming a year from now? Or are you the leader that's going to say, hey, we'll cause chaos at the last minute and my team will figure it all out?
Really good answer. How do you typically handle that, Scotty? What do you typically do when you're trying to create urgency in a sales cycle?
Yeah, well, I'd say the sales we have at Demostack are a little bit different. Where I'm going through like things like technical validation. But what I will say is I love Mike's approach to honestly creating, it's like an implementation plan, right? You're creating this like strategy to go live, and the earlier you get in, like the earlier you're going to be able to solve it and then actually like deploy it. And so I appreciate that. For what I do to create urgency, I'd say it's pretty similar. What I'm going through are different ways and strategies that, hey, how are you going to use Demostack and not just use it within one person, but to deploy it widely, right? And so the language will be a little bit different, right? But I think the approaches are similar.
Mike, you and I met last year for the first time, and I love your story because you were a Marine, and then you wound up, at Aspireship, learning how to get into software sales, and then you've just been a hockey stick this year. I mean, your story has been all over LinkedIn because of how successful you were. What's the biggest thing you learned this year that you would tell Mike from 6 months ago?
Don't give up. Because it was the number one thing that I was thinking about doing. And it was really scary because I never really gave up before. But it was like everybody that I had talked to didn't even want to let me get into the door. Like no recruiter, nothing that I could do did they want me to get a chance at an interview. And I was just telling myself, like, all I need to do is get face to face with someone and I will close this job. Like I can bring value to this team. And I remember very vividly, I was like on the brink of giving up, and Jack put me in contact with you, and I reached out to you, and you told me, you were like, look, the most successful salespeople I know are athletes and veterans. You do not give up. You will find a way. and go sign up for Aspireship, and they will help you out. And that's what I did, and here I am.
And I'll tell you, that was one thing when I was a hiring manager in the cruise business. You know, we were taking people from all over. I was always looking for ex D1 athletes or ex military, because especially in a cruise ship, right? There's so much institutionalization of you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. But I could trust them when they were so far out at sea off the coast of, you know, Tasmania. I would trust my athletes and my military to do their job. So you know what, give a vet a chance, man. By the way, if you know, just a quick plug for Bunker Labs, another great place where a lot of vets are getting opportunities to start their own startups. So just a quick plug for Bunker Labs because they're awesome. Mike Wander, you know, Mike, I got a little bit of a beef with you, buddy, because your LinkedIn profile now says mediocre sales guy, average email consultant, and decent in partnerships. I'm going to call bullshit on all three, so fuck off.
That's fair. That's fair. I deserve that. You know what I mean? But hey, it's funny, right? I like to add a little comedy with all the gurus that are out there. You know, I'm far from it. Got a lot to learn.
One of the best follows on LinkedIn. You definitely want to follow Mike Wander from SaaStr. Thanks, pal.
Appreciate it, boss.
Scotty, what'd you learn today on Go to Market this week?
Well, yeah, I learned that actually doing things live is kind of fun. Like this is pretty great, and I appreciate your time, and I really learned a few different things from our guests. Actually, number one, that there is a dark social web somewhere.
Yep.
Number two, that I should be asking questions, right, and kind of reframing people's interest back on them. And then number three, I really liked Mike's perspective on like long-term selling, right? So he's got one event every year with SaaStr, and so he's starting to build that 364 days before the next one. And how is he going to go about that? So really appreciated the events that I got to hear about, as well as the people and your time.
2 events for SaaStr next year because they have the Europa in, I believe it's June in London. So, you know, I'm gonna go see my pre-sales collective guys, my sales engineers in London. They know how to party.
Yeah, let me know if you need an extra hand there. Okay.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe, share, do all the things. Appreciate you. Have a great day.